The smog in Beijing has made it more urgent than ever for China to lessen its reliance on coal. The country is now the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, but China's investment in clean energy has overtaken the US and EU combined. Will the climate meetings in Paris make any difference? We'll talk to a Chinese government representative at the summit, but first joining me now from Paris is our reporter Liu Xian. And what role is China playing at these talks in Paris, and have we seen any breakthroughs yet?
Well, the role of China is extremely important and watched by all sides. Even before the conference started, China's action, China's preparation for this conference has been fully underway. China issued a number of joint declarations with some of the biggest countries or blocks of countries. For instance, there was the China-US climate joint statement. There is the joint statement between China and the European Union, between China and Brazil, with India. So a series of commitments right ahead of the COP21. Now, during this conference, I could see that this morning, for instance, a deputy head of the Chinese delegation was swamped by journalists from all over the world after a press briefing. Everybody had a lot of questions to ask them. China's position, of course, is very, very important. The role China is playing, well, some Western media has quoted anonymous Western sources saying China has been blocking the process of negotiations. Well, I talked to some Chinese negotiators and they say it is natural that during the process of negotiation you state your position. However, the fact that when China does that, it is seen as obstructing the process of negotiation. What I can tell you is China has made it very clear they want a deal successfully coming out of Paris, and they are working towards that. I talked to the deputy head of the Chinese delegation, China's Deputy Foreign Minister Liu Zhenming, and he had this to say just the other day. Let's listen in.
There's no any alternative, no option for any country, to stay away from the Paris Agreement. That's why I think we are appealing to all the countries to support the forthcoming Paris Agreement.
Right, so at this moment, while we're waiting for a second final draft, China has been continuing consultations with both fellow developing countries and developed countries so that we can come to a compromise at the end. The Chinese head of the delegation, Xie Zhenhua, said this will be a draft or an agreement where nobody is happy with, but everybody can accept, and China is willing to make compromise as well.
Now, what kind of impact is Beijing's latest heavy smog having on these climate change talks?
Well, unfortunately, that definitely put China again on the headlines of a lot of Western media. And we also hear foreign journalists asking exactly the same question to head of Chinese delegation, Xie Zhenhua, during one of the press conferences. And Mr. Xie gave a very clear answer. Pollution, air pollution is not a new problem. It's not just these few days. We know this problem for quite a while now. And that exactly shows how urgent China needs to take steps to adjust its industrial structure, to adjust its energy structure. And as President Xi Jinping actually pointed out, this is an effort with one stone, you hit two birds. While you fight climate change, you can also help reduce smog, reduce air pollution, and improve the happiness, the sense of happiness and satisfaction of the Chinese citizen, which is very important at this moment. So again, fighting climate change is not a pressure that we get from other countries, but rather a need that we feel from within. Anand.
Also joining me from Paris is Zou Ji. He is Deputy Director General of China's National Center for Climate Change Strategy and International Cooperation. Thanks for joining us, sir. Chinese negotiators in Paris are saying a deal is expected by the end of the weekend. What is China hoping to achieve from these Paris talks?
Actually, now we are in a very intensive negotiation, so day to night. And for the moment, the most important pressing thing is about fundamentally CBDR, I mean common but differentiated responsibility, how to reflect these basic principles of the UN Convention on Climate Change. And based on that, we also have some and solve the problems, including, for example, INDC target, how to update that based on what, and how to use the global stock take, in which way, what the purpose of the global stock take, and how to ensure transparency of the implementation of these agreement, and how to reflect the differentiation between developed and developing countries. And besides, some traditional issue is about financing support from developed to developing country. I mean, in terms of finance, technology, and capacity building. So those are some difficult issues.
Now, the authorities in China, in the capital Beijing, have issued a red alert. That's the first time that's happened. It's the highest of 4 levels of pollution. What kind of pressure does that put on the negotiators in Paris to reach an agreement?
So you can see that that's a pressure, but here, in the international multilateral process, we regard it as our mitigation to achieve an effective and equitable agreement, because that shows now to address climate change is not something for others, but for ourselves. This is what we want to do, with or without international pressures. I would say with international cooperation, we can do quicker and better, but that shows we have to take action to reach some co-benefits, I mean, not only for carbon, but also for local air quality, including particulates.
What are the main steps China will have to undertake to bring down the level of greenhouse gas emissions in the country?
We have various ways to do that. Number one, to upgrade our economic mix. I mean, to enlarge the share of non-fossil fuel, including wind turbine, solar, and hydropowers, I mean, renewable as well, and to enlarge the share of natural gas with less carbon-intensive fuels compared to coal, and also to improve our efficiency, energy efficiency, by restructuring of the economy. I mean, to extend the production chain. I mean, to make the manufacturer rely on knowledge, technology advance, etc., rather than the increase of inputs. I mean, natural resources inputs, and technology, R&D, demonstration and dissemination of clean technology is another important measure. But furthermore, we believe changing people's awareness. I mean, for example, to avoid very materialized, very carbon-intensive or not environmentally friendly lifestyles in consumption. So we have a lot of ways to do that, but certainly we also need to conduct economic reform in a view to change stakeholders' behavior, to let them to shape their preference for consumption, for production, and towards the low carbon, green and low carbon pathways.